Yes. So, what is the security? Security could be of many times, and if we speak it, if spoken from the perspective, it could be human security and national security. And security implies freedom from threats and freedom from everything. So, I think I lost a chapter on slide on peace. So, I'll start with that. So, for us, what is peace? As we are talking about peace, security, disarmament, and arms control, let us talk about what is peace. And you won't find a slide here because it's been jumbled. And sorry for that. So peace is rather a broader concept. So peace is rather a broader concept. And what does peace mean? Peace means absence of war. That's what peace means. You have to maintain a proper security, or like there's been a silence, you say that, oh, I feel at peace, right? So you feel at peace means what? Without any external disturbances, without any issues like, or without any fightings that you have been going on in your general day-to-day life. So in same way, peace means there's no war happening. So it's just in peace, we'll be talking about it in international perspective. So from international perspective, peace means without any war, and this peace is merely an absence of war. This is said by Albert Einstein, and this means, in short, peace is a socio-political condition. So how does do you get peace? You could either get peace by your personal psychological issues or economical issues or social issues that you have at home or with your spouse or with your colleagues. So same thing, if peace transfer to on international space, it is called as a socio-economic instrument, and there are various types of peace. So this peace studies is done by Johann Galton. He is known as father of peace studies. He gives peace of two types. One is negative peace and one is positive peace. Negative peace is after the aggression has happened and the absence of war, or absence of violence. Once something has happened and you have taken something to negate it. So that's what we call it, negative peace. And positive peace is like before, suppose there's a war going to be happen or might happen in future. So all the human society or all the human beings, they come together, they form an integration. That is what we call positive peace. See, positive peace means capturing a peace without that something, the destruction could have happened, before destruction could have happened. So that is a positive peace. Negative peace is something like where the destruction has already happened, then you have come to rescue for it. So then there's a new concept called new notion of peace. So new notion of peace is nothing but it's a threat. It's a security threat. It's a military attack. Earlier, the wars or the disturbances to the peace has been only done through wars or this conflicts among the nations. But now the latest developments, or with the latest evolutions, this new peace or new threat to peace could be seen in the form of terrorism or insurgencies, or example insurgency. If we talk about, you might have come across this Uri attack, Balkot attacks, right? These are all insurgencies or terrorist attacks, insurgencies. Or there's been an cease of fire. There's been an the enemy state taking over your territories. These are new concepts, new notions to the disturbing peace. So these are two types of pieces. Sorry, two types of peace: positive and negative. Negative happens when there's been a war, and after the war happens, they come to the rescue and negating the things. So that's a negative peace. And the positive one is it happens even before a war had happened. Like, it is not a result of war. So security could be human security, national security, and human security and national security, and a international security. And here security implies freedom from threats, and human security means freedom from fear. Okay. Security implies what? It's freedom from threats, right? That's what you are securing yourself from external attacks. So that's in a way I'm having this freedom to secure myself from external attacks that might happen in future. And human security means freedom from fear. See, generally, as in human beings, fear from everything. Example, if we talk about Hobbes' state of nature, in that also, we understand that he explains man, the state of nature is cruel and brutish. In fear of life, this man commits, or in fear of life, this man commits this atrocities in order to preserve himself in a fear. So here, fear is perceived always from human security point of view. So this concerned nations, those who are in the international space, those who are at threat, these concerned nations try to prevent war through a threat through a bilateral agreement. So this could be bilateral agreement or multilateral agreement. Bilateral means between two nations, and multilateral means two or more nations, or the other huge number of states are been included in that. Like they make a come to treaty, make some points, and abide by it. They sign a treaty saying that I'll abide by it. I'll limit my forces to it. So in a way, you are giving a contract. So this contract, this is sometimes contract is binding and non-binding. This could be broken at any time, or if broken at any time, are there any consequences to it? So, etc. All these things are like these agreements or a long-term treaty for not taking military action against each other. That's what we spoke about. There are different notions of security. Security could be perceived from notions, and peace are types. So security is traditional security and the human security. So if we talk about traditional security, then traditional security is prior to the protection of nation's territory, preservation, and sovereignty. So traditional, if it is anything called traditional in international space, that basically talks about its territory, its geography, its diaspora, its civilians, and its ideologies. So here, traditional security means protecting a state, nation's territory, and preserving its integrity and the sovereignty so that it could not be ruled over by an external actor. So there are four components of this traditional security. Priority to protection of nation's territory. Nation may choose to surrender. See, once a traditional security has happened, so state might act in different ways. So let us understand there are types of these different ways state could act. So what it is? So first one is nation may choose to surrender. See, in times of someone is attacking me, I might fight or flight, right? You might have heard about this adrenaline issue that in state of panic, you either fight or flight. So same thing happens with the state. So in state of discrepancies or in state of security at risk, state will act either four types. First one, it will either choose to surrender or it will prevent war to defense. Like it will counter attack or it will save itself from defense. And third one is may try balance of power because it will go bandwagon with the superpowers. So that is what bandwagoning means, and it wants the protection from the superpowers. So it tries to balance this this threat, tries to balance this threat or the aggression by the external state and do the alliance building with other nations. So it goes with this is basically collective security. If we are not wrong, we read collective security in the previous chapter, right? So this is collective security. Uh, so do the alliance building with the other nations. So in case of yes, in case of war, state may choose to surrender, or it may choose to fight back, or it may call for external help from superpowers in maintaining a balance of power and do the alliance building with nations. Then let us understand what is human security. These are basically traditional point of view. The main state's agenda is to protect itself from external aggression or its territory. That's a traditional sense or traditional scope. So now second security is human security. So what happens in this human security? Human security, they basically call it a global security, and it's a non-traditional view where you don't protect your territory. Your main agenda is to look into. These have emerged in the later 1990s with globalization or with disintegration of Soviet Union or opening up of borders. And as there's been only like single unipolar world, so people started to look out for uh, the non-traditional ways they could attack or they could protect themselves. So this could be seen, these are basically in response to global warming, international terrorism, health epidemics like AIDS, swine flu, and the recent coronavirus. So this happened what? This happened emerged in 1990s, the concept of human security. In 1994, UNDP. So UNDP gave United Nations Development Program, it gave Human Development Report in 1994, which basically talks about human security, ways to protect human security. See, basic now these days war have become a costly affair, right? Especially in 1990s, states have started to open up, and their main agenda is to run like a cheetah in terms of economy building. So many states would try to avoid war, but rather your own issues at your nations, your own issues in your motherland are turning up against you. So, in that way, human development report by UNDP led for this new concept of security called global security. So, this comes with a tagline says freedom from want and freedom from fear. So humans are always tend to be attached with the fear concept. So they are like freedom from want and freedom from fear. Human security is in turn security. I'm sorry for the typo. So both cannot be ignored anyways. So human security in turn, the traditional security we are talking about. So both cannot be ignored in any point of view. It both human security and the traditional security both are important. See, let's suppose if you're only focusing on human security, like looking after the epidemics, rise of epidemics, or giving up policies on global climate, but what if your territory at your risk? What if you've been attacked by your enemy state? Then all these things would go in vain. So your sole agenda is to protect life, right? So both human security and traditional security are important. Then nuclear proliferation and arms race. So we have come across peace, we have read security. Now we are talking about nuclear proliferation and arms race. So what is nuclear proliferation and arms race? This is a new concept. But arms race is an older concept of this arms race started once the world has become bipolar during the Cold War phase that we have read in previous chapters. So nuclear weapons, here we talk about like what are nuclear weapons. So basically, what are nuclear weapons? Nuclear weapons are nothing but there's two types of nuclear weapons or nuclear bombs, right? This atom bomb is basically a fission where they come together, and this mainly plutonium and uranium are used. Then hydrogen bomb is fusion. So this atom bomb is fission where the particles break down and explosion happens. So in this, the main element is either uranium or plutonium, and hydrogen bomb is fusion, coming together or clubbing of items. So this is what nuclear weapons mean. An important one is Manhattan Project. So what is Manhattan Project tomorrow if an option comes? Is it a bomb missile development, or is it a economic policies have been developed in the project, or is it health, housing development, or is it looked into global environment security issues? So the option would be atomic bomb missile development. It's a program in USA where $2 billion were put into it, and over 3 lakh workers were employed for this Manhattan project. So what happens in this project is an atom bomb or a missile was developed secretly. So this missile or this bomb was used in Second World War on Hiroshima and Nagasaki on 6th and 9th August. So if you come up this, if you ever question that where did USA or how did USA drop the bomb in Japan on Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and we haven't heard about atom bomb till date. In those days, this happened as a secret project. So of course it has to be a secret project, right? So this Manhattan project is an American bomb missile development project where these bombs developed were dropped like little uh, a man was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and nuclear age 1945. We call it 1945 as a nuclear age because in 1945 this bomb was developed and then it was used for the first time. So this led to the invention of mass destruction weapons. So if you look at Japan, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki are still recovering from the radioactive outcome of these bombs that have been dropped of them in 1945 until date. Imagine the effect of this atomic bomb and how destructive it is in and what is the scope of it. So nuclear age 1945 we call it, and nuclear proliferation. Nuclear proliferation is both quantitative and qualitative increase. So increase in nuclear weapons. What is quantitative? Quantitative is in numbers. Like there's been a huge number of these weapons that have developed. And qualitative. Qualitative is over a period, the mass destruction, the amount of destruction they could cause. Like initially they were taken in a plane, then dropped from up, right? So later, the ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, where it could be shot from through a fixed target across the continents. So imagine the technological development it brought. So this nuclear proliferation is both qualitative and quantitative increase in nuclear weapons. So this has led to the age of tension, age of nuclear warfare, or especially with the Cold War tensions growing around. So there's two types of proliferation if we consider it. So first one is vertical proliferation. So in vertical proliferation, this major five countries that have been declared the nuclear power countries. So USA, UK, Russia, China, France. Then what is horizontal proliferation is this technology developed by these vertical proliferate countries have been passed on to their neighbor, so friendly states. So those states are Pakistan, North Korea, Iran, and Israel. The technology have been passed on to them, or either this nuclear power state could come to their rescue earlier days. So how and when these states have become nuclear power states? So 1949, 1945 it was developed, right? So until 1949, USA had monopoly, but in 1945, 9 September or October, if I'm not wrong, USSR tested its first ever nuclear bomb and it was successful. So 1949, USSR became nuclear state. So since then, this shift tilt in the balance of power from unipolar world to the bipolar world has emerged with just single detonation of nuclear warhead by Russia. And both powers started influencing or exerting their power in the global scenario. And that's when the Cold War, post-Cold War, and the disintegration of Soviet has happened. Then in 1952, Britain got its first one and it was made nuclear power state. Then 1960, France, 1964, China. So these countries are called nuclear club. These countries are called as nuclear club. And India, 1974, it tested and successful in 1974. So we got very late, around like if compared to China, almost like 15 plus years, and arms race. So this arms race, this continuous race between these nations started when USA experimented thermonuclear bomb in 1952 and USSR in 1953. So this led to the experiment of thermonuclear bomb. And what happened then? What happened in arms race is it led to the development of ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. These are like super powerful or mass destructive weapons that you could ever find in this generation or you could ever find on Earth. So these countries, this led to what? This arms race. It's been like beneficial to this super powers because they are getting something out of it, right? They are exerting their powers, they are making their enemy state fear because we've been developing our technology, etc. And we have been creating ICBM, so you have to fear us. But this led to the third world countries in an arms race against in order to procure these weapons, in order to secure themselves from their neighbors or their enemy state aggression in spite of them living in poverty, in spite of increasing illiteracy and increase in floods or famines or like rumbling economy, these countries have started to invest their resources in gathering these arms. So this in a way led to the arms race. So what happened is nine countries by then possesses nuclear weapons. These countries are USA, UK, Russia, India, Israel, Pakistan, and North Korea. This is an important MCQ question. So I hope, I wish you remember it for the future. And SIPRI, Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, this basically does a research on how many nuclear warheads are there, what states uh, have been procuring these nuclear warheads, and what investment they are doing it. So SIPRI, in report of 2019, it declares that there are 13,865 nuclear weapons in the world. So imagine 13,865 nuclear weapons in the world, and imagine the destruction caused by uh, just two bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So imagine the amount of destruction that would lead to if this all, or suppose at least the round figure of 1865 would sit down to fight at once. Then expenditure is 88% of expenditure by the Western nations is on their nuclear weapons, is on their procuring nuclear weapons or investing on a high technology to investing in a high technology to build more destructive weapons. So SIPRI, Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. So now what all countries are nuclear weapons countries? UK, USA, Russia, India, Israel, Pakistan, and North Korea. Now all nuclear power, but these countries, all the nine countries, they go by second strike capability. Second strike capability is in case of war, I would not attack first. I would wait until if my aggressor state or if my opposite enemy attacks me, then it gives me innumerable amount of power. Then there's no stopping. I will definitely counterattack, but I will not attack first. So that's what this says. All nuclear powers have second strike capability. Then superpowers have MAD, mutually assured destruction. So what is MAD? What is MAD? Because these superpowers know that they are capable enough of destructing each other in a blink of an eye. So they are at more risk into than getting into uh, war with each other directly. So that is why we see these countries fighting on a third soil, fighting in a third soil or third world countries rather than fighting face to face, because they damn sure know that they possesses mutually assured destructive ferocious weapons that could destroy both nations in a blink of an eye. So this is what we call as balance of terror. This balance is caused because of terror that they possesses mass destructive nuclear weapons. So I hope you understand what is MAD, mutually assured destruction. This must be important. This is important. This is especially speaking from superpower nation's perspective. So next is disarmament. Disarmament is what? Disarmament. Armament means what? Possessing weapons. Disarmament means elimination of disarmaments. So what happens in this elimination of armaments? It is the reduction or elimination of certain arms. This does not propose for banning or destruction. This only calls for reduction or elimination of certain arms of for the purpose of ending an arms race. So disarmament has come as in to counter the arms race. So what happens here? It bans particular weapons, and the main aim is to prevent the accidental outbreak. So accidental outbreak is what? As accidental outbreak is if the country wanted to project its power, it would not listen, it would not look into the matters of any international organizations or any nations that would counter strike them. Just in the rage of war or rage of conflicts happening, they attack. So in order to stop that ferocious or like the blind attack, this disarmament treaties have come into the picture where you eliminate certain mass destructive weapons because they are too powerful to be present in first place. So how did it? This is not a new concept, disarmament. So this has been there since long. So in suppose in 1816, the Tsar of Russia proposed to Great Britain for reduction of all types of armed forces. So here he spoke about armed forces, but disarmament in general in today's world, we are talking it from the nuclear perspective. So in Hague Conference, 1899, uh, in that it proposed to outlaw the deadly weapons. So a Hague Conference is in 1899. You have to remember what Hague Conference. And second Hague Conference in 1907 is it came up with certain some resolutions, and it recommended the disarmament is a sole criteria in order to reduce this mass destructive weapons to certain extent, or restrict their number or eliminate their presence in the world. But all these things have failed to look into the things, and certain over a period the disarmament movement or disarmament treaties have come into picture, but those are all failed. They were not ratified, or they were not binding, or they were just bilateral, they were not multilateral, etc. So what are those failed disarmament movements? We'll read now. So first one is Treaty of Versailles. You all know Treaty of Versailles is what? 1919. After First World War, the Germany was put on restrictions and humiliated to surrender their weaponry, their military, etc. So, but in spite of that, Treaty of Versailles, the Second World War broke out in this in the notion of the humiliation that it faced in the First World War, and then after the First World War, there's been a peace organization established, right? We all know, we read it in UNO lesson. So, League of Nations 1920 Article 8 specially calls for disarmament, but failed because League of Nations itself vanished into thin air. Then Washington Naval Conference in 1921 and 1922, where these countries, Britain, USA, France, Japan, and Italy, they have come up with a proposal for disarmament, proposal to control or eliminate certain mass destructive weapons, or to eliminate this arms race that's been happening. And Geneva Protocol, you might have read it in news, 1925, where it prohibited the use of poison gas or biological agents in warfare. This you might have read in news with sarin gas, something that the North Korean civilian, I think North Korean civilian was killed, who belongs to the dynasty, to the premier's family. So there, the poison sarin gas was used, which was against the Geneva Protocols. So Geneva Protocol 1925, it's an important one. It's an important from any competitive perspective, or for you to understand how disarmament got the concept of this poison gases or biological warfare into, and disarmament, or as a point of threat to the security of the nations. Then World Disarmament Conference in 1932, which was conducted by LON, League of Nations, at Geneva. It also failed because these countries couldn't settle upon, and French-German rivalry overthrew these resolutions to the party. So, as League of Nations itself did not uphold the peace, so the World Disarmament Conference, which was conducted on behalf of League of Nations, did not stand still. And then Four Power Declaration in 1945 by USA, USSR, Britain, and China, signed to bring practical agreement on regulating armaments in post-war. So what they all did is, here they all signed an agreement in order to bring an agreement to stop the arms race. Did you understand? So they all signed an agreement so that they'll bring an agreement on the mutual terms and mutual understanding among the nations, so that this will stop arms race or disarmament of nuclear warheads in future. So then Atomic Energy Commission was set up in 1946 by United Nations General Assembly. This was set up specially to look into the disarmament movements. Then Bernard Baruch, we've read it in Cold War lesson. So in 1946, he gave major proposal to curtail nuclear weapons, and proposal to set up UN atomic development research and allow no single country to conduct research. So this was not succeeded due to the Cold War tensions, or to the Cold War issues that's been going on between the superpowers. So Bharat's plan, and later it was most of the plans that was adopted from his proposals that he did on. So the major proposal is to curtail nuclear weapons, and he proposed to set up a new UN atomic development research and allow no single country to conduct research. I mean, here he meant to say, if you are conducting a research, you must come together. These countries must be united in conducting a research, so that the technology that's been going to be developed will be shared by everybody else, and no country will be at higher end or higher stake, or show that its power. Okay. So if all the countries are coming together for the research, then technology is shared by everybody. It's an open secret. So uh, nobody would be feeling like the opposite state might have had the more weapons than me, so let me start a arms race so that I can be more powerful than my enemy state. So that he called for that, so that couldn't happen because of post Cold War, due to the Cold War tensions. And Gromko plan 1946, it's a counter to Baruch plan by Soviet minister. Here he calls for proportionate reduction of conventional arms and trades. Proportionate reduction means, suppose if I reduce one, and the other countries which holds to double the number of nuclear warheads I possess, so it should reduce by two. So this proportionate reduction, but it got failed. Then in 1947, Commission on Conventional Armaments by United Nations Security Council, it set up this. So why did it set up this? In order to find ways to reduce the size of nuclear armaments. So this is an official setup by United Nations organization by Security Council, because main power or main function of Security Council is to maintain peace, to bring peace in international space. So Commission on Conventional Armament in 1947 UNSC set up this movement, to find ways to reduce the size of nuclear armaments. Next one is, I hopefully it changes. Yes. UN Disarmament Commission was set up eventually in 1952. This was made to examine the recommendations of disarmament movement to follow up and evaluate, but failed when Soviet withdrew from it. And it was dissolved lately because it was not feasible for the nations to examine and make recommendations to follow up and evaluate on the number of warheads they're going to possess and the technology they are working on. This is basically giving your secrets, your country's secrets openly in the name of agreement or bilateral treaty. So, Atoms for Peace Plan 1953, Eisenhower proposed to establish an international pool of fissionable material for peaceful purposes. So this led to the stature of International IAEA, establishment of International Atomic Energy Agency, headquartered in New York in 1956. So what did Eisenhower call for? Eisenhower called for a pool, international pool to establish the fissionable materials for peaceful purposes. So you have to pool all the fission materials. So in a way, if any fission material gets lost, then you might have a count that where did it go, what country took it, and what are they going to do with it. So this gives the count of fissionable material that is available in the world. So, but the one good thing that came out of this stature is they developed IAEA. Then Open Skies proposal. Open Skies proposal is a Geneva summit where America proposed open sky. So where America proposed that, this is an interesting one. How I don't know how did it come up with such a treaty. So where it proposed that both the territory of USA and USSR must be inspected through air. So flight must be passed uh, with a radar. With the radar, it will scan that what weapons do you possess, or what secret nuclear developments or secret missions that you are doing. Like Pokhran example, you might have come across many movies. So for the same reason, it wanted for a proposal of open skies where they did not agree to it. So it's a failed agreement. Then Rapace Plan 1958. So this Adam Rapace, he's an Poland prime foreign minister. He proposed to establish the zone of free of nuclear weapons in Central and East European nations. So these proposals were uh, not accepted then, but later this adopted for establishment of denuclearized zone in Latin America, especially. These Latin American countries need not, they should not possess any nuclear weapons for themselves. Neither do they allow any testing of weapons. So this plan was proposed to establish the nuclear free zones. So it was then rejected, especially in Central and East European nations, because he called for Central and East European nations, especially because to withdraw NATO and Warsaw Pacts, but they refused. Superpowers refused. But later these were established in denuclearized zone. The next one is Biological Weapons Convention 1972. It's a first multilateral disarmament. This banned on developing, producing, and stockpiling more than 155. Uh, this banned developing of nuclear warheads, production of nuclear weapons, biologically destructible weapons, and stockpiling of them. So here, more than 155 states acceded, and US and USSR did not want to give up their third type of mass destruction weapons. So they pursued arms control. So if if a smaller countries have agreed to it, then the superpowers have been disagreed to it. But if superpowers have been agreed to it, and the smaller countries have been disagreeing to it, depending on their advantages and disadvantages that they have been getting, these policies or bilateral or multilateral treaties have been getting their okays or not okays. So next one is arms control. Let us understand what is arms control. Arms control is basically to protect my territory and to create a stability and maintain a standing army so that in case of war, I might be equally powerful as my enemy state. So according to Colombia and Wolf, arms control measures can be categorized into two. They are arms reduction, which implies mutually agreed upon, like I give up on certain set of arms, so you also give up on certain set of arms. This is mutual. I give up, suppose I give up, I like ice creams, you like chocolates. I give up ice creams, you give up chocolates, of both equal importance to each other, and which makes us equally viable human beings. So, like that, if we see from the state's perspective, they have come together to reduce equal reduction. Like if I reduce A, you should also reduce. If I reduce 2, you should also reduce 2. So for the nations involved in the agreement, and arms reduction may be between two or more countries on a regional basis or a worldwide basis. This could be either local, regional, or international perspective. So this treaty is between not only just superpowers or between neighbors or neighbors or Eastern Bloc, Western Bloc, Asian Bloc, Eurasian Bloc, like that. And second one is arms limitation refers to agreements between two or more countries designed to limit certain types of weapons, their impact, and prevent its accidental outbreak. First is to proportional reduction. Then second one is to limit certain types of weapons from actually doing the production or possessing it or holding of it. Why? In order to stop this accidental outbreak. So it refers to arms restraint. This is an agreement between two or more nations restricting the sale of arms. So what happens in restricting the sale of arms? Because sale of arms, the third world country, they are investing a lot of money in this arms race, and they are focusing less on their issues at state, such as military, health, ill health, illiteracy, or the outbreak of epidemics. So in spite of focusing on those, they've been started to do arms race with the superpowers in collecting the mass destruction weapons. So this refers to arms restraint, that is agreements between two or more countries restricting sale of arms and military technology to other countries. So this is not just arms, but also transfer of technology. So then arm control measures, n number of treaties have come up. So hopefully, but that did not lead to any better picture or any better position of world in a global space. So first one is Antarctic Treaty. So you might have understood by the name itself, or you might have had this question like, why aren't these countries fighting in Antarctica? Why aren't these countries fighting in Arctic? Because in order to protect the biodiversity or in order to stop nuclear weapons or dumping of nuclear waste, there's been a treaty that's all already in a place. This is Antarctic Treaty 1959, but it came into force in 1961. Then next one is Hotline Agreement. Hotline Agreement is a direct radio or telegraph hotline. It's an US slang. Hotline means a connection or it's basically a communication mode. Okay, nowadays hotline is what? Instagram. So same like that those days, it's a wire or telegram links between Moscow and Washington to ensure proper communication between two heads in the time of crisis so that they would not attack, they would not use this mass destruction weapons by accident. Then Limited Test Ban Treaty in 1963. This treaty was signed by USA, UK, USSR in Moscow, and later it was signed by 11 states except France and China. So this treaty does what? It bans tests in atmosphere, outer space, underwater, or in any other environment. If the explosions cause radioactive debris to be present outside the territory, then that state is responsible in gathering or in taking those nuclear waste. So this came into force in October 1963. Next one is Outer Space Treaty 1967. So this happened what? The states, Outer Space Treaty basically eats in the name itself, like to placing nuclear weapons in a space, in a satellite, in a space station. Okay, so it basically stops that. So that's why there's been a peaceful skies. You could see the things without any fear of looking at the nuclear weapon head that could got shoot at you at any point of time. Then Treaty of I don't know how do you pronounce this, so probably a Latin space. So Lateleco, Latelolco, something. So it makes what? It makes Latin America as a nuclear free state, where free zone, where Latin America cannot possess or neither test nuclear weapons. So next one is NPT. NPT is a famous one, Non-Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty 1968, passed by UN, and three aims are nuclear disarmament, non-proliferation, and peaceful use of nuclear energy. So this is signed in Washington, but it regulated the acquisition of nuclear weapons by those countries that had tested. See, this allowed only those countries that had tested this nuclear weapons before 1967. They were allowed to keep, and the country those who did not possess us or those who did not test are not allowed to keep. So they must stay nuclear free states. So this doesn't make sense. So states of vertical NPT only had a stake in that. So this was opposed by India. So India did not sign the treaty, and also it is discriminatory on the limitations, as India did not test. By then it was tested in 1976, if I'm not wrong. So this also, we wanted to keep an option open because China by then had developed nuclear warhead, and it's being a ferocious enemy. We wanted to keep this option open, and also Pakistan did not sign because India did not sign. Then seabed treaty, same thing, outer space seabed. That seabed, you should not test, you should not use uh, beyond the 12-mile limit, and this introduction of international conflict and nuclear weapons in areas already free of them. That's why there's a free space, water, seabed, and outer space are free of nuclear warheads. So then strategic limitation talk, SALT 1, SALT 2, we have read it in previous chapter. So this is an nuclear arms treaty, which is a limited time. So for 5 years, suppose anti-ballistic missiles of defenses of both powers were limited and they were frozen. And 1974, they signed another agreement, which is to be valid until 1985. This is called SALT 2, where a ceiling was made on ICBMs, submarine launch missiles, then limit on 1300 with independently MIRs, targeted reentry vehicles. So this is SALT between USA and USSR. So this is the Cold War detente phase where they entered into SALT 1 and SALT 2, where they restricted the possession of nuclear warheads through ICBMs or submarines, launch missiles or MIRVs. And also this slowed the arm race in strategic ballistic missiles with the putting of this. Then Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty ABM 1972, USA and Soviet, because it's still 1972, so it's Soviet, agreed to have only two ABM deployed areas where they can have this anti-ballistic missiles deployment areas, where only two places. And also they signed an agreement, this has to be valid till 1985. Then CTBT Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty in 1996. This is binding, and it bans all nuclear testing. India opposed it because it is unequal, and American Senate also rejected this treaty. So overall, this has been rejected because this has to be legally binding in order to stop nuclear explosive testing. And this was in 1996. But we just had a nuclear weapon and we wanted to explore more of this. So that's why India opposed it and sought strategic offensive reductions treaty. This is reduced deployed warhead. It's a bilateral treaty between USA and USSR. This is to reduce deployed warhead, means the warheads which are ready to go, those must be reduced. So convention on cluster munitions, this happened in 2008. These are latest. This gives a prohibition and a framework for the action and addresses the humanitarian consequences of civilians. So this cluster of munitions for the first time in 2008, it addresses the civilians that's going to be under attack, that's going to be losing their things. And new strategic arms reduction treaty. It's a new start in 2010 is signed between US and Russia because this is after liberalization, sorry, after disintegration of Soviet Union, with central standards on further reduction on limitation on offensive arms. So they further wanted to put a limit, put a base on the nuclear warheads they possesses. So this led to the reduction and limitation of offensive arms to be met by Feb 5, 2018. Then Arms Trade Treaty in 2013. This establishes common international standards for regulating international trade in conventional arms and seeks to prevent and eradicate illicit trade, that black market trade in conventional arms, and prevent their diversion. What happened now? The fundamental is the terrorist organizations through illegal market, they have started to possess these nuclear warheads. So the Hamas have started the nuclear warhead with this missile technology, right? So how did they possess? Because of this illegal market accumulation. So a new arms trade treaty was established in 2013. This came up with some regulations of what? To regulate the conventional arm trades, to stop this black market trade, to stop this diversion of fission material. So then Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons 2017, it prohibits the use of uh, threat development. Then it prohibits the use of production, manufacturing, acquisition, possession, stockpiling, transfer, stationing, installment of nuclear weapons, or assistance with any prohibited activities. So this does what? Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. This basically calls for this basically calls for elimination or possession or the development or manufacturing or acquisition or trade or stockpile or transfer. So this does everything. This calls for a stop of that. Then yes, so this is what we have read in this chapter. This is about peace, security, disarmament, and arms control. So peace, we've read about negative and positive, then security, traditional, non-traditional, then disarmaments. These countries to disarm, they come up with various treaties. Then arms control, also various uh, the things were followed. So I hope we are clear, and you have to understand the basic concepts. What is arms treaty, what is disarmament treaty, etc., etc. So that's what we have read in this, and hope we are all clear with all the previous chapters or the six class chapters that we have read through. So if any doubts, you can shoot. Otherwise, uh, there's more still 5 minutes left, so we can you can shoot the answers. So we spoke about its peace, security, disarmament, and arms control. Then yeah, this slide is messed up, so sorry for that. Security, types of securities. Then UNDP reports what is nuclear proliferation. This is increasing both number and the technology. So that's what we call it proliferation. Then arms race. Then who are nuclear club countries? What is horizontal proliferation? What is vertical proliferation? Then arms race. Then the expenditure, the countries that spend money on it. Then what is disarmament? Disarmament is elimination of armaments. And was it a new concept? No, it's been in existence since 17th century. So it's Tsar of Russia. Then there happened two Hague conferences. So these are basically the resolution to remove or recommend deadly weapons or disarmaments. Then the failed efforts. We have read what are the failed efforts. So these are all failed efforts. And important is Geneva Protocol 1925, please remember, and also Washington Naval Conference. These are important from a competitive exam perspective. Then atomic energy, Baruch Plan, Commission on Conventional Armaments, then UN Disarmament Commission, Atoms for Peace, Open Skies, Rapaki Plan, Biological Weapons Convention. Then what is arms control? Measures that we've come up with huge treaties, huge agreements, multilateral and both bilateral. So the proposal to the treaty is there in the name itself. So you should understand. Then NPT. NPT is an important one. Please do give it a read on the arguments and the arguments that India came up with in SC, UNSC or the Non-Proliferation Treaty meetings. So please read NPT Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in detail. Then it's fun actually. It's very strategically that we have denied, and it's very strategic that these nuclear club countries have come up with such a proposal and have agreed to it, rather than agreeing to the earlier treaties. They agreed to ban because they saw the rise of this third world, and their importance would reduce if once third world started to accumulate these nuclear warheads. Then seabed, IBMs, sort, etc. Yeah, that's it. I hope you all understood all the six chapters that we spoke on, and also Manhattan Project. Remember what is Manhattan Project? So because it's this word itself confuses you, you might understand it with some climate or environmental project. So Manhattan Project is an atomic bomb. They wantedly kept it Manhattan Project so that they would think they were constructing some buildings, high-rise buildings, etc., especially in Manhattan, New York. So that's all for today's.